It's a big Saturday at Saratoga. Let's cap the 12 race Coaching Club America Oaks Day card. Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to another episode of Capping the Card right here on NYRA Bets YouTube. Now, before we get through all 12 races for Saratoga's Saturday card featuring the Grade 1 Coaching Club American Oaks, make sure to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the network, whether it is race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs, and so much more. Just this week, we have an expansive interview with Shug McGahee. We kicked off our Road to the Breeders' Cup show, as well as a in-depth preview of the Coaching Club America Oaks. And now we're going to talk about the entire Saturday card. I'm not even going to be at Saratoga for the Saturday card, though. Where am I going to be? I'm going to be at Monmouth Park for the Haskell Day, along with my colleague, Kaylee Shapiro. We're going to be doing a lot of coverage down at Monmouth because the Haskell is presented by a little company called NYRA Bets. So I'm going to be down there watching journalism, Gosker, goal-oriented, Burnham Square. Going to be a lot of fun. So listen, make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. And oh, by the way, we're going to have plenty of Del Mar content for you too this summer right here on the channel. All right. Well, listen, folks, the premise of capping the card is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through all 12 races on Saturday's Saratoga card. I'm going to give you my top pick. That goes without saying. I'm also going to give you a value play. Value play could be a horse that I think is worthy of win consideration, a horse that I would include in an early or late pick 5 sequence. Other times, there are horses that I think might just simply outrun their odds and have a good chance at rounding out an exacta or a trifecta or maybe even a superfecta at a really big price. So those are things to consider. I'll try to call out the distinctions between those things as we go through it, but the only way to get to the end is to start at the beginning. And so let's kick things off with the very first race on Saturday, which is a 5.5 furlong, 2-year-old sprint for fillies bred in the state of New York. And this is an interesting race. I was not blown away by anyone in this race. Let me start by saying that. Jenna Antonucci's horse, I think, looks perfectly fine on the inside. The number 2 credit risk for Phil Serpe is sired by Tacitus. I expect all of his offspring to finish second regularly. You have a horse on the outside, Antonia. I really thought about using that horse. Really thought about using that one as my top pick. Jose D'Angelo's numbers, and this is a barn I have a huge amount of respect for. I really like Jose. I really like his horses. I really like the way he runs his barn. 1 for 47 over the last 2 years, looking at first outrunners and dirt sprints, 2-year-old maiden special weight races. I mean, this is not a barn you want first time out in these types of spots. And it's too bad because I like the Bo Liams. This one, the number 8, Antonia, is sired by Bo Liam. $6,000 standing fee, sells for $50,000 in the OBS April sale this past a couple months ago. Really took a long look, but ultimately landed on Jeremiah Englehart's horse. Listen, Jeremiah has been doing well here at Saratoga, and Belloro makes plenty of sense. Sired by Bolt Doro, always a good first out influence. The damn Jetbird has produced some nice runners. Jataros, who was a offspring of Cantheros, who won at second asking, but was a really nice horse who won a few times throughout the career. And then you can look at a horse like Defending Albert, who was sired by Practical Joke, who then stepped up and won first asking. So definitely some precocity on the dam side, which you like to see. And like I said, when you combine that with Bolt Doro, when you combine that with the fact that Jeremiah, over the last 5 years, 11 for 44, 25%, with first out 2-year-old maidens sprinting on the dirt, you like that sort of combination. Manny Franco aboard. Now, depending on when you're looking at the past performances, Manny Franco might be looking like he's ice cold. Here's the thing. On Saturday, Flavian Pratt is out of town. Irada Ortiz Jr. is out of town. Manny is picking up a lot of live mounts. I think it's going to be a big day for Manny, Kendrick Carmouche, Junior Alvarado, Joel Rosario. These are names you're going to be hearing a lot throughout the episode. Belloro, for me, just makes a little bit of sense. I like the 48-1 gate work 2 back. I think Jeremiah knows how to get these sort of 2-year-olds ready. This one makes a lot of sense. Where am I going to go as a value play? I'm going to go to another interesting sire, Galilean, who was a little bit of a hot sire for the New York sales last year in terms of looking at his yearlings. I got a chance to look at a few of them up close and personal. This one's workouts will not blow you away for Rick Dutrow Jr., but Dutrow rarely works his horses very fast. So that's not overly surprising. Joel Rosario up on the mount, a little bit more of a hunch play that I think that these Galileans are going to start running. And they've had a couple of nice runners already, and I just think you're going to start seeing them racking up wins in some of these New York bred races. 8-1 in the morning line for the number 7 Blue Highway. So I think that's one to really take a long look at from a value standpoint. Also took a look at Serpy's horse I mentioned earlier, Credit Risk for Tacitus. A little bit interesting there. I like the 5 furlong gate work. I always like seeing that sort of foundation before debut being built into the horse. So certainly the 2 Credit Risk feels like a very spready first leg of the early pick 5. There's not a monster in this race that really scares you. So like I said, Belloro makes a lot of sense. I hate taking a favorite in a race that doesn't have a huge standout, especially in a 2-year-old race. But I think that's a hard horse to exclude off your early pick 5. But if you're going to try to do it, you're going to have to use a few different horses because there's nobody else that really is a clear alternative to the favorite in this sort of a spot. Well, let's move to race number 2 on the card, which is a $50,000 maiden claimer going a mile and 16th on the inner turf course for 3-year-old and up state breds. And where did I go in this race? Well, I went to the number 8 Classic Castle, 5-2 for Horacio De Paz. I like this horse. Listen, the horse is getting the class drop, and I think it's needed. And you look at what this horse has done against, maiden claiming company before, has run well both times. Second, very close second, and then a very close third as well in maiden claiming 40s. And now is running for Horacio. The last couple of times out, I thought ran well against maiden special weight competition, particularly that May 11th race that was off the bench, nearly got the job done in terms of, finishing second. And was, ultimately it was a little bit of a DQ and moved back to third, but I still thought ran well. And then last time out again, faded late. I think Horacio realized this horse might just not be quite good enough to break its maiden against maiden special weight company, needs to go against claiming. So I think the class drop makes sense. I also think blinkers off can maybe help this horse relax a little bit more. And I think that's a good thing. Ricardo Santana Jr. has been riding beautifully during this meet. So for me, English Castle, I should say, not English Channel. That's his dad. But English Castle at 5-2 makes a lot of sense in this race as a class dropper. Now, if you're going to go for a little bit of a price, I really like Chris Englehart, not Jeremiah. I like Chris Englehart's horse, the number 5 Haute Couture. And I remember when this horse ran last time out, first of all, I like the name. But second of all, I really like the perk up that you saw from this horse on the turf. So that was despite a bad start. Eric Cancel aboard that day. And we've already seen a horse come back to win because of Ed from that race. Staying at this same level, but now third start in the career, second time on the turf. Like I said, I really like that 60 Beyer speed figure last time out. Really showed a nice turn of foot, was off slow, still had to be steadied. And again, not a great trip. Now we're getting a jockey upgrade from Eric Cancel to Manny Franco. I like that. I just think there's a lot of things that line up for Haute Couture that make sense in this spot, despite staying at this maiden claiming level, not really moving up or down in class at all. But I think 8-1 is a very honest price on a horse that I think is pretty live in this spot. Again, a race where do I like English Castle a lot? Sure, I like this horse at 5-2. It's my top pick, but I'm certainly not overwhelmed necessarily. A horse like Trinity River 2-1 for Linda Rice, I get it, but coming off the bench with a class drop, Linda is very good with those moves. This is a crazy stat. Over the last 5 years, Linda is 4 for 6, very limited sample size, 4 for 6, bringing horses back from 180 plus day layoff and dropping them in class from maiden special weight to maiden claiming. So it's a plus move for her. Listen, and this horse has run well on the turf. Would it shock me if Trinity River won? Absolutely not. I'm going to try to beat the horse with Horacio's. We've seen front end speed do all right and hold on, particularly on the inner turf course. And like I said, I like this number 5 Haute Couture a little bit. I think the horse gets off a little bit better. Manny's aboard. Expect a little bit more of an aggressive ride out of that one. Well, let's move to race number 3 on the card, which is a $95,000 allowance for 3-year-old New York breds. And we're on the turf this time, the outer turf. And where are we going? We're going to George Weaver in a turf sprint because that's just what you do, folks. George Weaver, this is kind of his bread and butter. He knows how to get turf sprint winners home. And I think this one makes a lot of sense. Is coming out of N1X company last time out, last couple of times, but showed, I thought, a really good effort last time out, finishing second to a horse, Warlow, who came back to win the next start. Horse is now a recent gelding. So I think I'll be interested to see this horse's fitness and demeanor in the paddock, because those are kind of the two reasons you would geld a horse. Either you think this horse maybe needs to be a little bit more fit, or you think maybe this horse needs to be, just taken down a little bit of a notch. Maybe he's a little too keen. Jose Lezcano aboard for this one. It can sit a few different types of trips, one gate to wire, but has shown the ability to pass horses. Did that last time out. Sat fourth, got up to second. So was able to kind of get past some horses, and that was promising to see a little bit of a new dimension. Clearly, sprinting is what this horse does best. Has very good early speed. I think the 5.5 is actually going to suit this horse just fine. Has run at 6 before, but now is cutting back a little bit further. 7-2. I'll take a shot with not for hire as my top choice. Going to be playing against Joe Sharp and Bosun, the number 5 at 5-2. Listen, horse makes plenty of sense as well, but declining speed figures does concern me a little bit here. 84, 79, 77. I like on the other hand, you look at not for hire, the trajectory is a little bit different. 66, 78 off the bench. Now we're third back in the form cycle. Should be ready to throw a pretty big effort there for George Weaver. In terms of my value play, listen, it's not a ton of value in this race, but I do think the horse in the number 7 Identity Crisis at 5-1 for Tom Morley certainly makes a little bit of sense. The horse is the last out maiden winner. Morley's horse has been running well. Junior Alvarado up on the mount. I always like seeing that. And this one, again, a Blame offspring. I always like Blame. Granted, he's usually a better broodmare sire, but I always like it when I get to see some Blame horses run. Another one, very, very good speed. And I think you could look at that debut effort and just cross a line through it. A horse had a very bad start that day, was still able to run on for third. And then last time out, you really saw what this horse could do with an aggressive ride, a front-running ride. I actually think the cut back to 5.5 is going to be beneficial. Expect this horse up on the front end. But the nice part is Junior's seen, or at least Tom's seen, Junior's riding the horse for the first time. The horse can pass horses. So the horse doesn't need to get to the front end, could easily sit off the pace, especially from that outside post position, track the early pace, and then make a run at the top of the stretch. But I think Identity Crisis is a very legitimate win threat at 5-1 in that third race. Let's go to race number 4 on the card, $110,000 allowance race, going 6 furlongs on the main track. Where are we going to go here? We're going to go to certainly not a huge price, but a little bit more of a price. And the number 6 Strong State at 9-2 for Alstall Jr. with Kendrick Carmouche aboard. We're going to try to beat a couple of favorites. Paul is a star for Tom Morley. Is the 7-2 second choice. Going to try to beat Roswell for Bill Mott. Kaylee Shapiro is probably going to be upset with me for trying to beat a Bill Mott horse. But the reason I like Strong State, two things. One, we're second off the bench. I like that. And a pretty significant layoff, too, from September to June. So this was not a, March to, late May sort of a layoff. This was a substantial layoff. Horse wins off the bench against $50,000 starter allowance N1X company down at Churchill Downs. Now, that last part's the important part. At Churchill Downs. Churchill form has been lights out at Saratoga. And quite frankly, whether it's Joe Sharp, whether it's, Mark Cassey, whether it's some of these, Brad Cox, whether it's these horses, the trainers bringing horses up from Churchill Downs, Churchill form has been exceptional. So for me in this race, I'm really leaning on that angle because here's a horse that's coming out of the race at Churchill, last time out, off the bench, gets the win, 76 Beyer speed figure. I think absolutely has the opportunity to move forward. I love seeing that 47-4 work on June 25th and has managed to get up here to Saratoga as well as already trained over the main track as well. So like seeing all of those things from Strong State at 9-2 on the morning line price. I just think this one, again, like this one a lot. So 9-2 Churchill angle, I'm in. My long shot, very similar angle for trainer Phil Bauer. Number 7, Claire's Run, 8-1. First of all, this is a $300,000 daughter of Spadestown. There's some expectations here with this horse. They debut the horse on turf. Horse doesn't run a lick. All right. Absolutely does not like the turf. They stretched the horse out a little bit to 6.5. They put it on the dirt in a restricted maiden race at Churchill. Horse runs a hole in the wind and runs a 77 Beyer speed figure, wins by 7 lengths. Could have won by a lot more than that. Now the horse picks up Jose Ortiz, is facing winners for the first time, admittedly. But I think Phil Bauer is a trainer I have a lot of respect for. Talk about people I have respect for and whose barns I tend to keep an eye on. When they have a price, I like to attack it. Phil Bauer is one of those. He's a really good trainer. Again, the Churchill angle, the fact that once this horse got on the dirt, you realize what this horse was bred to do. That speed figure could have been a lot faster if that horse had chosen to run a little bit more. And notice, that horse has been live in both starts. Went off as the favorite in debut, despite not running a lick that day, and then went off as the favorite again. And so this is a horse that's got some nice dam side pedigree. You look at a horse like Miss J. McKay, nice horse, a stakes winner on the turf, sprinting. Even look at Tripolina, another one, half sibling, was a stakes winner second time out, sprinting 7 furlongs at Woodbine. So this one's got a precocious pedigree, 8-1. I think that's a steal. If you get anywhere near 8-1 on this horse, I would absolutely hammer this one as a win bet, as well as including in your early pick 5 ticket. All right. Well, let's move to race number 5, a $75,000 optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up, going a mile and a 16th on the turf. And interesting race. The coupled entry is really hard to get around. And that's ultimately where I landed as a top selection. Now, you could look at a horse like Activist Investing, I think, as a logical alternative for Chad Brown, the number 8, 4-1 on the morning line. Horse is essentially second back from a massive layoff. Went from September 2023 to February 2025. Now, what gives me pause is that the horse wasn't seen since February and now comes back. Now, it's good. The horse isn't in for the tag. Chad's keeping this horse at the right level. Dylan Davis is aboard, and that's fine. Irad's out of town. You get it. So is Flavian. So those are his top 2 choices. Dylan is up on the mount. That makes plenty of sense. So I'm not too turned off by that. This horse is super talented. But again, I just wonder. I don't love an angle that I usually play against is when a horse comes back from a long layoff and has another layoff. I just don't love that. Now, the horse ran really well off that long layoff, but Chad's great off long layoffs. He's great off short layoffs too. But Activist Investing, if that horse, I just wish that horse had another run in him. And I think I would have absolutely thought about using this one up top. But for me, Rhetorical and Clear Conscience are just, it's hard to get around both of them in some ways. I mean, Clear Conscience, this is a horse that's a stakes winner last time out up here at Saratoga against New York Bred Company, ran a 91 Beyer speed figure, is absolutely on his own good enough to win this race. And then you look at a horse like Rhetorical, who was entered in a race last week that got taken off the turf. Now Will Walden brings him back in this spot. Manny Franco up. This horse has done nothing but get better, has been favored in all 3 starts. Terrible effort 2 back, but, just had a really troubled trip that day. Still managed to almost close like a freight train and win. I think this horse is really dangerous, and this horse has done nothing but improve, coming off a little bit of a layoff. But like I said, it was supposed to run last week. Now is running this week. Has been able to get his works in consistently. So you like seeing that. Listen, I know it's an odds-on, a favorite, and you try to beat those. I think this one's a tough one to beat, though, in this sort of a spot. Now, where am I going to go as a price? You could look at a horse like It's All Coming Together, the number 7 at 6-1. I wanted to try to find a little bit more of a price there. And so I looked at the number 2, Oh Really, for Cherie DeVoe. That one to me is pretty interesting at 8-1 in the morning line. Kendrick Carmouche up. Another one coming out of a race at Churchill Downs. This one on the turf. And broke its maiden on the synthetic in debut. It ran pretty well in a couple of other spots. Finished third to a horse like Tagliatelle, who I like. Finished second next time out at Turfway in February. It didn't run quite as well in that race 2 back, but then switched onto the turf. Horse ran real well for Cherie, and a race that already brought back a next out winner in terms of multitask. So you like seeing that, and also coincide with stretching the horse out. Stretch this horse out. Listen, you have Kitten's Joy influence underneath. You have Warfront up top as an influence. The horse is going to like the turf just fine. So I wasn't surprised by the perk up to the 85 against N1X competition. Now we're going against a little bit tougher, but I think at 8-1, this horse makes plenty of sense. Cherie, come on. I mean, she's about as good as there is right now. Hard to bet against her. Now, a little concerning that Jose Ortiz is not up, which is normally her number one guy. But, Jose is up on clear conscience, which shows you, again, maybe his opinion of it. But Kendrick Carmouche up here. Kendrick's a very good rider as well. He's been having a nice start to the Saratoga Meet, honestly. So I'd expect a strong ride from Kendrick in this spot. And I think it's a horse that from that inside rail is going to be able to save position. Last time out was wide the whole way. Should be able to save a lot more position and has enough speed to put itself in at least a mid-pack position, maybe more of a pocket trip. So I think really at 8-1 presents really nice value in this fifth race. Well, let's go to race number 6 on the card, and this is a $110,000 allowance race, N1X, going a mile and 3/16 on the Mellon turf course, the outer turf course for 3-year-old fillies and mares. Where am I going here? Going to the number 6 Alamara for trainer Chad Brown. This is a horse second back from a little bit of a freshening, has been really close a couple of times, but no cigar against some tougher competition. Lost against a horse like Tourjet last time out, even though this one was the overwhelming odds-on favorite. Tourjet ran a huge race that day. I remember that race, and I loved Tourjet, I should say. Tourjet. I love that horse that day, and that was actually, I think, maybe my pick of the day, or my best bet of the day. Actually, was Tourjet in that race. But this one made up some ground on a horse that was just, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tourjet just went out up front, and took him gate to wire. Nobody caught that horse. So I remember that race pretty well. And I thought Alamara did well to ultimately run second. 3-1, relatively short price. We're going to try to beat the Jorge Abreu favorite at 5-2. Curlin's Angel, who's facing winners for the first time. And again, ran a big number last time out. Certainly looked very, very impressive for Jorge. But I'm going to try to beat that one with Alamara. Chad Brown, hard to keep him down. He's winning a third of his entries this meet. And again, Manny Franco, like I said, I think has a big day on Saturday. So where am I going to go as a value play? I'm going to throw one really far downfield here. And this is a horse, prime example of a horse I wouldn't include necessarily up top. And you can clip this out when the horse wins at a huge price. But this is one I would include in like trifectas and supers. And it's Lena, the number 1 horse. And I know it's for Roy Lerman, who's 0 for 15 this year. Lane Luzzy, 0 for 8, riding at Saratoga. And Lane's not been riding well, not had a lot of luck up here. Not that he's been not riding well. He just hasn't had the best mounts sometimes. This horse didn't run that bad in the race against Alamara and finished 4th that day at 14-1. And this is a horse that started its career in Europe, broke its maiden over in Europe, going 1.25 miles over the synthetic in France, but nearly broke its maiden going 1 mile on the turf over in France as well. Hit the board against winners over there, which is something I take into consideration. Horse comes back from a 13-month layoff last time out, gets off slow, doesn't have the best trip, manages to finish 4th in a race dictated by a gate-to-wire winner. Now we're getting Lasix for the first time, second back from a really long layoff. I think this horse is going to run much better. I don't know. Maybe David Aragona is rarely ever wrong, who sets our morning lines here at NYRA. I think this horse is a lot better than 20-1. And I would use this horse absolutely in a trifecta, maybe even an exacta if it's a stupid price. This horse is interesting to me at 20-1. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think it's one you got to at least take a second look at if you're thinking about playing this one vertically in tries and supers, because this is a race where I could easily see Curlin's Angel and maybe a horse like Wrigleyville or Alamara all running well. And then I could see, and maybe even the number 10, Celtic Charm, coming off a really long layoff for Bill Mott. That one's coming off a massive layoff, which is why I didn't want to use that one. It's just such an X factor, and it's a little too short of a price at 9-2. But I could see Alamara and Curlin's Angel both running well. And then I could see Lena running third at like 39-1. I see that sort of trifecta where you're like, man, that try paid out huge because you got a big long shot coming in underneath. So I think Lena's an interesting one for that purpose. Now let's move on to race number 7 on the card. And this one is a real doozy. $100,000 maiden special weight for 2-year-olds going 6 furlongs on the main track. There is a $1.3 million son of Yopon in this race for Steve Asmussen, who, oh, by the way, has won 60% of his entries at this meet with Jose Ortiz up. I'm playing against the horse. Stradale at 3-1. The Yopons are all the rage. I get it. I'm going to go with another Yopon. But to me, this one looks like maybe this one is going to want a little bit more ground. And you just look at this horse physically. The horse he's a big horse, got a nice walk to him, a nice stride to him as well. He went 9-4, if I'm not mistaken, in that OBS April 25 work. So, worked easy in that regard. He was definitely asked to get that number, but wasn't asked too hard. You saw the horse come back to start working in May, if I'm not mistaken, which is always encouraging that you see a horse come back from that April sale and start working pretty shortly thereafter. It means maybe they weren't asked for too much, which is something you like to see. Horse has a gate work. Listen, there's a lot of things to like, but I'm going to try to play against it just because I think this horse ultimately might want more than 6 furlongs. The horse that I'm going to go with is another Yopon, but this one sold for $625,000 as a yearling last year at the Keeneland September sale and is owned in part by Mike Rapoli and Spendthrift. That tells you a lot. Also, the dam side pedigree, the dam, Connie and Michael, comes from a family of just a ton of 2-year-old winners. You look at that pedigree on the dam side, there's 2-year-old winners all over the place. So very precocious pedigree. Pletcher works this one a 49 flat gate work bullet on June 27th. You rarely see Todd work his horses with a bullet out of the gate before debut, especially 2-year-olds. One comes back, works out of the gate one more time in July 13th, a little bit slower that day. But still, I thought this horse has a lot to like. Granted, it's a little bit more of a pedigree play at 4-1 with the number 4 emphasis. But I think this one makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to use emphasis at 4-1 as my top choice in this race. There's a lot of interesting horses. Chad Brown's got a Nyquist in here. That's actually the morning line favorite, if I'm not mistaken, at 5-2. Growth Equity, who's throwing out 47 flat gate works, and it looks pretty dangerous as well. But again, I'm going to try to play against that horse a little bit because the dam is not particularly precocious. Her offspring have only been 2 for 35 in her career, 0 for 3 first time out. The sires have not been bad. You go, who have the sires been? Quality Road twice and Arrogate. It's not like she's been bred to Uptown Charlie. And then, now we're getting Nyquist all of a sudden. Those are legitimate sires. So it's interesting. And like I said, at a short price, I'm going to try to play against that one. Maybe a foolish endeavor, but one I'm going to try to play against. Where am I going to go as my value play? I'm going to go to the number 9, Our Magical Moon, for trainer Mark Cassie, who, congratulations to Mark, broke his 4,000th, recorded his 4,000th victory as a trainer in North America this just on Thursday, the day that I'm recording this, and did it down at Colonial Downs, and then won another one for good measure up here in Saratoga. So congrats to Mark. Dylan Davis aboard Our Magical Moon, another little bit of a pedigree play here. Sire by Good Magic, sells for $500,000 as a yearling last year. And again, some strong gate works here, 47-3 bullet gate work on July 1st. I like to see that. The dam has already produced a first out winner, so I like to see that as well. So there's some dam side pedigree. The workouts have been solid. Cassie's very good with these 2-year-olds. Dylan and him have been very good together, 28% over the last year at Saratoga with nearly a $4 ROI. So I think you put all those things together, 10-1 on Our Magical Moon. Sign me up for that one. Yeah, I like that horse. I think about including that horse in maybe a pick 6 ticket. I think about including this horse certainly in my verticals, but I think that Our Magical Moon could run a really big race. But this is going to be a fun maiden race to watch and a really tough one to kick off that pick 6 sequence. Well, let's go to race number 8 on the card, which is a $50,000 optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up. Going a mile and 3/8 on the turf. And I'm going to go back to the well with a horse that I think I tried to pick last week. And this is the beauty. When we go off turf, they just come back. Makes handicapping a little bit easier sometimes because you go, wait a second, I just handicapped this horse last week. But Taraj for trainer Bill Mott. And Mott's gotten off the schneid. He had a big winner on Thursday, Stars and Stripes. I think he's going to have another big winner later in this card. But I think Tirage is a really interesting horse. This is a horse that is Group 3 placed over in Europe and lost to a horse Los Angeles in that Derby trial at Leopardstown back in May 2024. Then the next time out, finished well back and seemed to be, something clearly went wrong with that horse. Lost to another one, JRB, who's a very, very nice horse in the Hampton Court Stakes at Royal Alaska. And so this one now is coming over from a long layoff. Hasn't run since June 2024. Getting Lasix for the first time. I love that Mott kind of, is really good off these layoffs. Very good first time with a horse in the barn. And actually has pretty good numbers first time North America as well. We don't think of Bill Mott as bringing over a lot of these runners, but he's had good success in that space in the past. So I think Tirage at 9-2. If I'm not mistaken, this horse last week was 4-1. So I like this horse 9-2. A little bit of a price there is my up top play. I like this one quite a bit in this spot. I just think you have a little bit of back class here. A trainer who knows how to get them ready off the bench, has familiar with this sort of a move before, getting Lasix for the first time. Mott and Alvarado. I think this one makes a lot of sense. Now, where am I going to go as a value play? It's not huge value, and I usually like to try to look for a horse a little bit higher than 6-1, but better lucky than good makes a lot of sense. This is a horse I actually liked a little bit last week as well, scratched out of that same race. If you remember last week, I think the horse drew the 11 post, was really parked far outside. I was a little worried about that. Now it comes a little further in, gets a better of the draw here, and breaks from post position 6 for trainer Miguel Clement, who's already gotten a couple of wins during the Saratoga Meet. Joel Rosario up. This is a horse coming out of stakes competition, has run well, though, in the past against New York breds. And again, now we're facing open company for the first time, but I think this horse could run a nice race at 6-1. Certainly would fit in this field in terms of those speed figures. Incredibly consistent. Really going back to when this horse came back as would have been a 3-year-old. I'm sorry, as a 4-year-old. In April 2024, ran one off the bench that was a little slow at 71, but since then, 82, 84, 86, 87, 85, 89, 85. Second back from a long layoff. I think this horse makes a ton of sense in this spot at 6-1. So I really like better lucky than good in this type of spot. Maybe you look at a horse like Il Siciliano. I'm not Sicilian. My family's from Ascoli, and so we're more in central towards the Adriatic Sea. But I love my Sicilian brethren. But Il Siciliano, maybe an interesting horse, second back from a long layoff, dropping back down in class a little bit, 12-1 on the morning line. Ishmael Jaramillo coming up for Antonio Sagno. No early speed is going to rely on a huge late kick, but you go back and look what this horse has done with the Lasix, maybe a little bit of an underneath play for Il Siciliano at 12-1. So if you're looking for a little bit of a bigger price, that one's maybe one to think about. Well, let's move to my least favorite type of races to handicap, and those are turf sprints. And we have one in the grade 3 Caress. And in the past, this is a type of race where I've always not struggled, but it's so interesting. I feel like this is a division that has had some big names at times. You've had Golden Pal, you've had Caravel. For a brief minute, you had No Balls. But now this division feels very wide open. And you certainly have a very formidable horse in the number 7 Future Is Now. It's hard to say this horse from Michael Trombetta has done anything wrong. Paco Lopez riding. I mean, this horse has won 3 of its last 4. 3 of its last 4. I believe 5 of its last, or 4 of its last 6. 5 of its last 7. And has racked up several graded stakes races and wins during that time. Got beat by Pipsy last time out, who's ultimately my top pick. Paco's coming up for the ride. I think this is notable. Now, Paco is coming up, I think, for Bookham Danno, but it also helps the Future Is Now up here. But Paco's coming up and leaving Monmouth Park, his home track, on Haskell Day, which is, I think, pretty interesting. So clearly, Future Is Now, very, very talented horse, incredibly consistent. I'm just going to try to go to a slightly better price with Pipsy and Will Walden. I think Walden has this horse humming. Walden is an exceptional trainer, 24% for the year. Jose Ortiz up on the mount as he was last time. This horse has great early speed. I think can flash it and get to the front and secure that inside position. I think could outbreak Future Is Now maybe like it did last time. Showed a lot of grits to really down the stretch. Was able to pull away and get the job done. I think Pipsy had a little bit more of a price at 7-2. I'm just going to lean there ever so slightly. Future Is Now, super hard horse to toss, though, right? How do you toss a horse like that out of your out of your late pick 5 sequence. I think that's really difficult. Now, a horse that might be a little bit of a value, maybe a horse that could upset, I think is the number 4, Cairo, who I considered using as my up top choice. This horse for Cherie DeVaux, Kendrick Carmouche aboard. Last time out, ran in that Intercontinental, finished 3rd behind Pipsy and Futures now, but that was the first race in 7 months. Now we're second back from a layoff, and the horse ran a career best Beyer speed figure in that Intercontinental. Horse can pass horses, doesn't do it all the time, but can pass horses. You saw this last year in the Soaring Softly, where it came up just short to Pipsy. As the thing about this one is, has finished underneath a lot. A couple of runner-up finishes here in North America. So there are some concerns there. Hasn't won yet in North America. But like I said, second back from the layoff, should be able to run a big race. I think looks pretty dangerous in this spot. Nearly won the Soaring Softly, second off the bench last year. So I think, again, second off the bench. The fact that Cherie placed this horse so aggressively off the bench in the Intercontinental, I think really speaks to what she thinks she has here with this daughter of Kurishiu. And I think you could see an even better effort this next time out. 95 Beyer speed figure last time. I really debated using this one as my top choice, but I think the 4 is super live here, and I'm going to be using that one in my late pick 5. Well, let's go to race number 10, which is the Coaching Club American Oaks. And this one is going 1 mile and an eighth on the main track for 3-year-old fillies. And what am I going to do? Interesting race. You can get more in-depth thoughts of this race on NYRA Bets YouTube. Kaylee Shapiro and I talk about this one in a little bit more depth and a little bit more detail. So I'll keep this not brief, but I'll keep it a little bit shorter. Ultimately, I'm going with Immersive over Take Charge Milady. I absolutely love Take Charge Milady in this spot. I don't like Cara. I think Cara is, I don't know if she's a better or worse version of randomized, which is when you let her alone on the lead, she'll beat you all day long, just as randomized will for Chad Brown. If you press her, forget about it. And Cassie's even said as much. Where Cassie, the trainer, has even said, if she's alone, nobody's catching her. If you want to go with her, we might not win, but you won't either. And that's probably true. Because remember what happened in the personal incident. I remember it was the Ogden Phipps. No, it was a personal incident last year. When Florent Drew decides we're going to put randomized away on Idiomatic. And he did. He won the battle and he lost the war because Raging Sea came running at the end because you wore yourself out in the process. The most interesting and the most important horse in this race is number 5, Dry Powder. That's the most important horse in this race. And that feels silly to say for a 12-1 shot who's coming off a pair of runner-up finishes after breaking his maiden. The horse belongs. Horse finished a second by a head to Sweet Seraphine, who I'll talk about in a second. But Cara, I think if she gets alone up front, forget it. Then it's over. But I think Dry Powder is going to apply pressure for Jose Lezcano because otherwise, why are you in this race? You're in this race to stay close, even if and you have the inside position. So go. Just go. Force Cara to clear you. And even then, I would angle back out and re-engage her. And so I just think those two are going to go at it a little bit more up front in a similar way that Tenma took it to Cara in the Kentucky Oaks and she folded like a chair. So I'm playing against her, and I just think Immersive has the screws tightened. I think Brad Cox did not necessarily have her all the way cranked up for that Monomoy Girl, which was a first race after a long time on the bench because she had a little bit of a setback. Immersive at 8-5, the champion 2-year-old filly. She really battled to Take Charge Milady coming down the stretch. Showed a lot of guts doing it, I thought. Especially first off the bench. Could have easily given in, and she didn't. I think sits the perfect trip behind the speed this time out. And then at the top of the stretch, I think Manny's going to – this is a horse he has a lot of experience with. This is Manny's horse. I think she's going to be able to run a big race. Ran a career best by her speed figure, by the way, that Monomoy Girl off the bench. Now you look, 59-1, 5-furlong bullet at Churchill Downs on July 12th. The screws are now tight. And I think Immersive is going to run a huge race for Godolphin and Brad Cox on Saturday. Now, I think Take Charge Milady is going to run a huge race too. I got a chance to go see her in the barns up here at Saratoga. She's ready, man. She has a lot of energy. She's a nice-looking filly. She likes to get her picture taken, whether you're standing next to her or she's standing in the winner's circle. That Monomoy Girl victory was very impressive. She finished second to Cara on a day when Cara was lone speed, and she made up all the ground. I thought she ran the better race, and I just think Take Charge Milady, if you remember, she dealt with that quarter crack she was recovering from in the Kentucky Oaks. I'm willing to draw a line through that race. You look at her last two, very impressive. The Honeybee was off abysmally slow. And so those two terrible efforts, you could easily justify. You look at her other efforts, rock solid stuff. So Take Charge Milady at 9-2, I think makes a ton of sense. And I actually think a horse like the number 2, Sweet Seraphim for Cherie DeVaux might be a little bit interesting underneath too. That horse is coming from off the pace. Jose Ortiz rode this horse to victory 2 back to break its maiden, stretching out a little bit, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. Quality rode out of Bernardini mare. This was a $900,000 purchase. Again, there are expectations here for a very hot barn. So I think you look at a horse like Take Charge Milady and Sweet Seraphim, those are horses I'm including in exactas with Immersive. Well, let's go to the Alfred G Vanderbilt, which is a grade 2 and an absolute travesty. It should be a grade 1, and it certainly came up as a grade 1 race. Really good field. Really good field. Field of 8, but you got Nakatomi in this race, who, oh, by the way, won this race last year and nearly won the Dubai Golden Shaheen 2 back. You have a horse in this race like Baby Yoda. That's who my dad's going to bet. I can tell you that right now. Blaine DeSantis, my father, loves Baby Yoda. And he's loved Baby Yoda since before it was cool. He was on Baby Yoda back in July of 2021. He was on this horse then. He loved that horse that day. And a lot of other people did too, went off as a 3-2 favorite. I remember, much to the chagrin of one Andy Serling, who was confused why the horse was taking so much money. And it had nothing to do with the horse's ability. It had everything to do with the fact of the horse's name, I think, that day in particular. But one thing that we discovered is this horse likes Saratoga and ran really well last time out down at Belmont at Aqueduct during that meet on June 13th. Won a $100,000 optional claimer that day. I like Baby Yoda a lot. I do wonder if Baby Yoda's maybe a little bit better on Lasix now these days. Granted, ran a huge race in that True North up here at Saratoga last year. Regressed a little bit, finished 4th in that Alfred G Vanderbilt. 6-1, a little too short of a price. Nash is an interesting horse I'm going to get to in a second. Bookham Danno. I mean, come on. How do you not root for Bookham Danno? And then, of course, on the inside, you got Skelly, who I think is a little bit of a fraud and is a little bit more of a product of Oaklawn Park, but that's just my opinion. And so I'm never a huge fan of Skelly, and I don't love the inside post position. But Bookham Danno, let's spend a second talking about this one. New Jersey bred, winner of the True North, winner of last year's Woody Stevens, nearly won the Churchill Downs Stakes as well against Mindframe, Banishing, and Nisos. And so those are some pretty serious names that you're included in. Over sloppy tracks last 2 times out, but has obviously run very well going longer. And that's going over a fast track. Here's the thing, though. I think 7 is a better distance. Yes, I know he's undefeated at 6 furlongs, but you look at when he ran those 6 furlongs, it was at Monmouth Park. It was in an off-turf race. It was again at Monmouth Park. And that was a 4-horse field that he barely won that day over Little Knee and Bucciarino, who were nice horses, admittedly, but still, it was a 4-horse field at Monmouth and Jersey Shore. I think against elite competition, he's better going a little bit longer. I think he's better at 7. I don't know if he loves a mile, but he didn't mind it in the Cigar Mile. He ran fine that day, 5th. Didn't get off that well. And I think he's a horse that just is going to run a little bit better late. And so I actually think the 6 furlongs suits Mullikin much better. So that's ultimately my top choice for Rudy Frizette. Jose Ortiz aboard because Flavian Pratt, normal rider, is down at Monmouth Park riding a little horse. Well, who is he riding, actually? No, Flavian's riding goal-oriented. I was going to say he's riding journalism, but he's not. That's, of course, Umberto Rispoli. But he's riding goal-oriented down at the Haskell. But Mullikin, 7-2 on the morning line, your second choice, essentially, getting back on a fast track. Won the Forgo and the Nayrud over this track last year. If you remember that, I know it's BAQ, the July 6th, won that John Nayrud down in the city, but then came up here and won the Forgo last year up at Saratoga. So likes the track. Ran well, I thought, last time in that True North. Just got tracked down in the stretch by Bookham Danno. Again, I think that's the difference between 6 and 7, even 6.5 and 6. I think at 6, this horse is really dangerous. Mullikin, 7-2. And oh, by the way, look at that last workout that Rudy put this horse through. 46-3 bullet work going 4 furlongs. I like this one a lot. So that's going to be my top pick. My value play is Nash. Now, we got to see if Nash can run off Lasix this well. Now, the horse won the Hot Springs Stakes last year at Oaklawn Park off Lasix, so the horse can do it. Joel Rosario aboard, never been aboard before. Florent Giroux, Luan Machado have been kind of the usual riders. Pratt's been up occasionally. This is a horse that, broke its maiden, then went into the Gun Runner, went into the Lecomte, was on that, Derby trail, was never quite good enough to get, break through, was, finished second to Seize the Grain, the Pat Day Mile. Nice horse. Took a long layoff from June 24 to February 25, came back, clearly needed a couple of starts to kind of get some rust knocked off, broke, won again over the synthetic, actually going 6. And then one last time out, ran an absolute hole in the wind over a wet track, ran a 108 Beyer speed figure. Now, maybe it was aided by the wet track, but came from off the pace that day and looked really, really good doing it. Beat a couple of nice horses. Is Cross entered down at Ellis Park? So that is something to keep in mind, where Brad ends up running this horse. But if this horse runs up here instead of Ellis Park, I think 8-1, very honest price on the morning line. I think makes a lot of sense for a horse that, again, can track the pace closely and be maybe even a little bit closer, a little more tactical than Bookham Danno, and maybe get the jump on Bookham Danno. And so I think the 6 at 8-1 makes a little bit of sense there in that race. Well, let's close things out. Race number 12. We're $110,000 allowance race for 3-year-olds and up, going 7 furlongs. We're on the dirt. Stars and Stripes ran Thursday for trainer Bill Mott and ran a huge race that day. Now you have Stars and Strides. These are 2 separate horses. One of them is routing, one of them is sprinting. Stars and Strides won first time out at first asking over a wet track coming from off the pace. Beat a horse named Mainstream. Now here's the thing. Mainstream ran an absolute clunker the other day on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, at Saratoga and regressed badly from that race. And Mainstream might very well be a product of a wet track because his 2 best efforts are over sloppy sealed tracks. And his 2 efforts over fast tracks have not been as good. So Mainstream, not great to see there. You saw a horse like Secured Lender regress a little bit from that effort as well. Ran 5 points slower. So it's a little bit concerning that you don't want to buy Stars and Strides number entirely, the 92. Here's the thing. If the horse regresses a little off, the 92 still might be good enough to win here. Bill Mott, I think, has a very good group. Mott rarely wins at first asking. The fact he did tells you a lot. Over the last few years, it's interesting to see. Sorry about that, folks. I think that was Bill Mott calling me, actually, to see what I was up to. But no, I think Stars and Strides, listen, it makes a lot of sense here as the top choice, junior aboard. And I just think this one has come out of that race, has continued to train so well for Mott. Again, some expectations here, $475,000 purchase and really good pedigree. American Pharaoh up top, out of a Ghost Sapper mare. I think it's hard to get around this horse. If you look at a horse like Brad Cox's Invictus, maybe a horse like that, who admittedly didn't have a very good start last time and still managed to do pretty well. Didn't run particularly well in the Sir Barton. Clearly wasn't a 2-turn horse. Broke its maiden with a 92 at Keeneland off the bench. So, the Invictus is a nice horse. Certainly $1.2 million son of Into Mischief. Expectations there as well. So pretty tough horse. But for me, Stars and Strides, that's going to be my top choice in this race. Now, as a value play, I like a little bit more of a price here, and that's number 3, Vekoma Rides. I was really impressed with this horse last time out in a race. I remember going against Touchy and Sand Devil. Those are 2 nice horses. And ran second to Studley Do Right in the Nashua. We're putting the blinkers on. I think that's going to make a huge difference. And this horse ran an 82 off the bench, hadn't run from November to June, and essentially stays at the same level of competition. This field has come up tough, admittedly. But you look at who he's run against. He's run against Chancellor McPatrick and Tip Top Thomas and Moplex and Studley Do Right and Tony Eclipse and Touchy and Sand Devil. These are all nice horses that he's run up against in his career. 10-1 seems like a very honest price for John Kimmel. Kendrick Carmouche up, second off the bench, blinkers on. 10-1. I like this horse. I mean, I might just play a straight up Stars and Strides, Vekoma Rides exacta. And if you're trying to beat a horse like Stars and Strides and you're trying to beat a horse like Invictus, I think there's crazier ideas than Vekoma Rides potentially winning this race. So that's where I'm going to go as my top value play, not my top pick, my top value play. All right, folks. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Capping the Card. Hope you all enjoyed it as we run through all 12 races on Saratoga for Saturday. Hopefully, we can connect some winners, make a little bit of money. That would be nice. Build our bankroll up. But we're going to have plenty of content here for you on NYRA Bets YouTube for the Haskell, for Del Mar, for Saratoga. We got you covered. For the Breeders' Cup, for Keeneland in the fall. Just press that like and subscribe button today. All right, folks. My name is Matthew DeSantis. Wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races. And reminding you, friends, it's now post time.